This week for an intro, I will drink some whiskey and then move on directly to the comic books. So, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Fucking post haste. So Infinite Loop becomes the first series ever to have every single issue reviewed on this show. That is because it is the most fascinating piece of frustration I have ever experienced in pop culture. I was so totally entranced by the beauty and complexity of the first issue of this series, and then I was even more entranced by the way it just completely turned into suck. Then it would randomly bounce back up in quality only to fall back into pretentious lameness. Where Infinite Loop failed was in its understanding of the marriage between theme and narrative. This particular issue has a major failing in its sort of narrative spine, and this can be used to extrapolate the book's failures throughout its entire series. There's no actual narrative agency or plot progression in this issue. The main character, Teddy, literally just runs through time the entire issue, repeating the mantra that we have to fight together. As she runs through time, she passes by great people throughout history that have fought against injustice and sort of acted as these social revolutionaries. And she listens to their speeches as she passes. And these are speeches by like Harvey Milk and Susan B. Anthony and Malcolm X and other great people throughout history. The book makes a huge point to repeat these people's words. This is not actually writing. This is this organization of historical information. This is not a story. This is a Wikipedia entry. It's so frustrating because I agree with all the points this book is trying to make, and it just makes them so ineloquently that I can't get behind it. Infinite Loop just kind of repeats over and over again the mantra that we have to fight against injustice. The only way a change is ever effected is when we as a people will come together and fight against what we believe is wrong. No shit. Listen, the book never gives its readers credit. It talks down to them. The only thing it tells them is to fight against the man, or bad people. It tells us that injustice and inequality are wrong and bad, and that love, whether it's between a man and a woman, or a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, or a man and a whiskey, is good and pure. And it says all that, and the reader is left going, and? Literature, and make no mistake, this is what Infinite Loop is trying to be, literature, is not about telling you what to think, it's about giving you the space to think in. Great literature sort of just gives you the soil and lets you plant your own idea seed and grow your own idea tree so that it can bear idea fruit. Infinite Loop just yells the word tree over and over again. Infinite Loop built itself a beautiful stage to deliver a profound message. And then, when its time at the mic came, it just told us things that we had heard before. It didn't do its own cause justice. And while it's beautiful, and while it's effective in moments, overall, this book really let me down. I understand the first issues of Archie were written on K-balls. It's been a staple of the comic books industry since there's been a comic book industry. But having said that, I know exactly zero about this franchise. I mean, from the outside, it looks to be mostly based around misogyny, the sweater vests, and crossing over with things that used to be things. A cast that includes a ginger whose continued existence pretty much is a middle finger to the idea of Darwinism. A glutton who, for some reason, thinks it's okay for a 20th century male living in a free democratic union to be wearing a crown as casual a headdress instead of any other hat ever worn. Paris Kardashian, and the one that's blonde. So yeah, it just never seemed like my kind of book. However, when you tell me that a series is going to be written by Mark Waid and drawn by Fiona Staples, I don't care if that series is called Adventures of Unbuttered Toast. I'm still going to read it. From what I understand, this new Archie series is like a complete 21st century relaunch of the series. And from someone who is coming in with absolutely no context or baggage and just reading this series for what it's worth on its face, it's enjoyable and fun. It's a nice little slice of teen comedy drama. For the most part, everyone's relatable and likable, and even the people who are supposed to be the villains, if anyone can really ever be a true villain in high school, even they are interesting and nuanced and complex. Fiona Staples' art is still the best in comic books, and Mark Waid's sort of cheeky, bouncy dialogue is a perfect fit for the high school classroom. It's not an uproariously funny book, it's not intricately plotted, and I have no idea if its existence or execution is going to piss off actual Archie fans, but I like it. So yeah, I give it a recommendation. So I never do spoilers on this show, which is what I always say, before I spoil something. And I'm going to kind of deliver a spoiler for the Mantle right now. So the Mantle has been on your to read pile below like 7 trade paperbacks of Transformers and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You might want to cover your ears and eyes and think about cheesecake for a couple minutes. All right, are all you Mantle non-spoiler guys out of here? This issue, the Mantle, is the conclusion to the first story arc. A story arc that has managed to build a fairly deep and long-running mythos in a very short amount of time. That entire mythos is based around the Mantle's connection to this villain, Plague. And at that climax, the Mantle just kills the Plague. The good guy wins and the bad guy dies. The end. So it turns out the Plague was a little bit misunderstood, but for the most part, he was just an evil prick. So to summarize this entire 5-issue run so far, it's about a good person who killed a bad person, because they're bad. Okay, this is an example of something that I call universe maintenance. Basically, when a new series starts, they go through all this building, they introduce all these novel ideas, and sometimes you can kind of feel like the writer wants to move on to the next thing, but they're kind of mired in a story and they can't get their way out. That's what this really feels like. Like, Ed Bryson wanted to move on to new stuff, but he didn't quite have a satisfying closing thread to his first arc, so he's like, yeah, let's just kind of get that out of the way. I'll just slide my new ideas in the next issue. It's unfortunate and frustrating, and it creates a very, very anticlimactic first arc, but there are still a lot of really interesting things about the Mantle. The heritage of the Mantle itself is interesting, and the current holder of the Mantle is complex, nuanced, and actually probably one of the best female leads in all comic books right now. So the Mantle is still absolutely worth reading. It's still absolutely worth following. Unfortunately, it totally bumbles the ending of its first arc, and hopefully it's done so it can build something better. So, yes, I know that Commando is the greatest movie ever, but I still am not a huge fan of the dude who wrote that movie, Jeff Loeb. Like, seriously, if you guys didn't know that, Jeff Loeb, who is considered by many to be one of the great comic writers of all time, wrote perhaps the worst written action movie of all time.
Let off some steam, Bennett.
Anyway, I've never been that huge a fan of Jeff Loeb, and I've never been actually that huge a fan of artist Tim Sales, yet for some reason, when these two guys combine, they create a special kind of alchemy, produce some extraordinary comic books. If any of you haven't read Spider-Man Blue or Superman for All Seasons, they're beautiful. They're just great pieces of comic bookage. Not a word, I know, but I'm gonna keep using it. Captain America White is the latest collaboration between these two creators. There's a sort of common thread that runs through all the Loeb Sale works, is that each series is really about taking an established character and sort of boiling it down to their broadest, most relatable aspects, and sort of punching right to the core of what that hero stands for and what that hero has meant to a generation of readers. We are in the second issue of this series, and it's already kind of following in that tradition. This is the Captain America that we all know, that we all love. This is the broad billboard version of this character. And normally that would be an incredibly boring book. Yet the way that Loeb and Sale bring these characters to life, it makes these big broad ideas and makes them intimate and relatable. And while the narrative in these books is never really, I don't know, that complex, the tour that Loeb and Sale take you on through this character's universe is always a joy to go on. Loeb's whimsical narration blends perfectly with Sale's storybook art, and what you're left with is really a look and feel you can't find anywhere else in the medium. I'm first in line to take shots at Jeff Loeb every single chance I get, but when he's with Tim Sales, the dude does good work. And that's all I have to say about that. A couple quick announcements before we get out of here. First announcement, there will be no new episode of The Pull next week. There's not really a good reason. I just kind of need a break, and I'm gonna go hang out in the woods and drink with my friends. The woods are very bad at internet. You plug a USB device into a tree, you're covered in sap, and sap attracts ants. No one's having a good time. Anyway, holidays are coming up. There's probably gonna be a couple weeks here and there where I'm gonna miss a show because I'm gonna spend some time with my family and girlfriend and non-internet people. When I'm gonna miss a show, I'll always do my best to let you guys know in the outro to the previous episode, or on the channel's Facebook, or on my Twitter, or whatever. Second announcement is Video Game Time Machine computer dude and best buddy ever, Cody White, has been doing a lot more content for this channel and for the site. In fact, he's doing so much content that we are actually launching a sister channel to go with most of his new shows. VGTM Games is a new channel that's launched in collaboration with this channel. It's going to host mostly Let's Plays from me, Cody, and a bunch of our other friends. So go ahead and head over to the channel, watch some of the videos, and hit that subscribe button. And while you're doing that, make sure to hit the subscribe button to this channel. If every new subscriber we get this week, I'll buy one new tablet, because this one is so old and broken and filled with malware from watching porn that I can barely read my comic books on it anymore. And I had to read everything on my desktop this week. That was really dumb. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching this show and subscribing to this channel. You are all beautiful people. Make sure you come back the Sunday after next Sunday and every Sunday and time after that for a new episode of The Pull. Now get out of here and go read the comic books I told you to read. Ignore the ones I told you that sucked. But don't worry, we still got Squid Santa, Parkour in Human Creation Station, and Blacklight Dr. Manhattan. I was worried that when this story finally sort of like revealed what it was hiding, that it